Hello there, truth seekers. Welcome to Liminal Minds, the channel where we dive deep into the strange, the unexplained, and the downright mind-bending. Today we're taking a wild trip back to 1989, deep in the heart of the Soviet Union, for one of the most bizarre UFO stories ever recorded, the Voronezh UFO incident. Imagine this: a glowing red sphere, three-eyed aliens, a robot sidekick, and a Soviet news agency breaking the story to the world. It's the kind of tale that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. But here's the thing. It actually happened. Or did it? Over the next 13 minutes, we're going to unpack the strange event, explore the witnesses, the media frenzy, the investigations, and try to figure out what really went down in Voronezh. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our deep dives into the liminal. Let's get started. It's September 27, 1989, in Voronezh, a city about 300 miles southeast of Moscow. The Soviet Union is crumbling, the Berlin Wall is about to fall, and Gorbachev's policy of glasnost openness is letting all sorts of wild stories hit the press. It's around 6:30 p.m. in Yuzhny Park, a popular spot for locals. A group of kids, mostly boys aged 10 to 14, are playing soccer, kicking a ball around near a makeshift goalpost. The air is crisp, the streetlights are flickering on, and there's a faint hum of city life in the distance. But then, something strange happens. According to the kids, they first notice a pink glow in the sky, which quickly turns into a deep red ball, about 10 feet across. This thing isn't just floating, it's moving with purpose. It circles the park, vanishes behind some trees, then reappears and hovers right above them. The kids are frozen, staring at this glowing orb. And then it lands. A hatch opens with a hiss, and out steps something, or somethings, straight out of a nightmare. The kids describe these beings as 9 to 12 feet tall, with tiny heads and 3 glowing eyes. They're wearing silvery overalls, some with bronze boots, and a strange disc on their chests, almost like a badge or a communicator. One of the kids, a boy named Vazhasurin, later said the aliens had no necks, and their movements were stiff, almost robotic. But the real kicker? They're not alone. There's a robot with them, a short, clunky thing about 3 feet tall with a boxy head and mechanical limbs. It's like something out of a 1950s sci-fi flick. Now, things get even weirder. One of the aliens points a tube, about a foot long, at a 16-year-old boy who's watching from the sidelines. There's a flash of light, and poof, the boy vanishes. The UFO takes off, leaving a faint hum in the air, and as it disappears into the sky, the boy reappears, shaken but unharmed. The kids are screaming, running in all directions, some hiding behind trees, others sprinting home to tell their parents. But it's not just the kids who saw something. Lieutenant Sergei Matveyev, a local police officer on patrol nearby, later told investigators he saw a body flying in the sky that night. He described it as a glowing object, moving erratically, unlike any aircraft he'd ever seen. Other adults in Voronezh reported strange lights in the sky over the next few days. Some even claimed the UFO returned multiple times between September 21st and October 2nd. One woman, a factory worker named Lyubov Medvedeva, said she saw a red sphere hovering over her apartment block on the 29th, and it seemed to be scanning the area with beams of light. So we've got kids, a cop, and random residents all reporting something strange. Was this a mass hallucination, or did something truly unexplainable happen in Yuzhny Park? Now, this is where the Voronezh incident goes from a local oddity to a global sensation. On October 9, 1989, TASS, the official Soviet news agency, drops a bombshell. They publish a report claiming that scientists have confirmed a UFO landing in Voronezh. They say the craft left physical traces, like depressions in the ground, and even left behind 2 mysterious rocks that are not found on Earth. This isn't some tabloid or conspiracy rag. This is TASS, the mouthpiece of the Soviet government. The story spreads like wildfire. The world loses its mind. Western media jumps on the story. The New York Times sends a reporter to Voronezh, and their October 11th article quotes TASS directly, saying the aliens were three-eyed and over 9 feet tall. The Washington Post runs a piece on October 12, calling it the Soviet Union's Roswell. Even A Current Affair, an American tabloid TV show, sends a crew to Russia, airing a segment where they interview the kids through a translator. The kids stick to their story, even showing the crew where the UFO landed. Meanwhile, a local Voronezh company smells a business opportunity and starts selling UFO tours for 59 rubles, about $95 at the time. They advertise Voronezh as the land of the aliens, and people actually buy tickets, but not everyone's buying the hype. Soviet TV host Vladimir Posner, a prominent figure at the time, smells something fishy. He sends his own film crew to Voronezh, and they come back with a surprising finding. They can't find any adult witnesses to the aliens, just the kids. Posner goes on air and suggests this might be a case of the creative imagination of young children. He points out that the late 80s were a time of UFO fever in the Soviet Union. Books, magazines, and even pirated copies of American UFO stories were circulating widely. Could the kids have been influenced by something they read? The timing of this story is crucial. The Soviet Union in 1989 was a mess. The economy was collapsing, people were standing in bread lines, and the government was losing control. Glasnost meant the media could report on things they'd never touched before, including UFOs. A 1989 Time magazine article quoted a Soviet citizen saying, "They've been feeding us rubbish about communism for years. At least this gives us something new to dream about." UFOs became an escape, a way to distract from the chaos. Some historians, like Dr. Maria Ivanova in her 2015 book Soviet UFOs, Myth and Reality, argue that TASS might have played up the story to boost morale, or even to mess with the West during the Cold War. After all, if the Soviets could convince the world they were meeting aliens, maybe they could regain some of that superpower mystique. And let's not forget the cultural impact. The Voronezh incident inspired everything from Soviet cartoons to songs. There's even a 1990 Soviet pop song called Aliens in Voronezh by the band Zvezdy, with lyrics like, "They came from the stars, they danced in the park." It's catchy. But while the world was buzzing, skeptics were starting to ask questions. Was this a genuine encounter, a publicity stunt, or something else entirely? So, what did the experts find? The Soviet Scientific Commission launched an official investigation, which sounds impressive, but let's dig deeper. Some of the scientists were actually from the Voronezh amateur section for the study of abnormal phenomena, basically a UFO hobby group. They showed up a week after the incident, on October 4th, and used a method called biolocation. If you're not familiar, that's essentially dowsing with rods to detect energy fields, a pseudoscience at best. They claimed to find a 20-yard depression in the ground with 4 smaller dents, suggesting something heavy had landed. They also reported higher than normal levels of cesium, a radioactive isotope, in the soil. But here's where it starts to fall apart. Genrik Silanov, head of the Voronezh Geophysical Laboratory, later examined the so-called alien rocks TASS hyped up. His verdict? They were just hematite, a common earth mineral. He told the newspaper Socialist Industry, "Don't believe all you hear from TASS. We found nothing extraterrestrial." The cesium levels? Igor Saratsev, vice-rector of Voronezh University, pointed out that the 1986 Chernobyl disaster left traces of cesium all over the region. It wasn't unusual at all. And those ground marks? Local firefighters had a simpler explanation. They might have been from a burnt haystack. A haystack, not exactly the smoking gun for an alien landing. Skeptics in the West were quick to weigh in. Paul Kurtz, writing in Skeptical Inquirer in 1990, noted that the kids' description of the aliens' 3 eyes, silvery suits, a robot, sounded a lot like stories from the American magazine Saga, which published UFO tales in the 70s and 80s. TASS claimed the kids probably haven't read it, but UFO stories were everywhere in the Soviet Union by 1989. A 1990 article in Soviet Youth magazine even interviewed one of the boys, who admitted he loved reading sci-fi books. Could this have been a case of imagination running wild? But there's more to consider. Some researchers, like Dr. Vladimir Azaza, a prominent Soviet ufologist, believed the kids. Azaza interviewed the children and noted their stories were consistent over multiple retellings. He also pointed out that the kids showed signs of trauma and nightmares, fear of the dark, which he argued would be unusual for a made-up story. On the other hand, child psychologists like Dr. Elena Petrova, quoted in a 1991 Russian journal, suggested this could be a case of group suggestion. In stressful times, kids can convince each other of fantastical events, especially if they're already steeped in UFO lore. There's another angle we can't ignore: the military. The Soviet Union was known for its secretive weapons tests, and Voronezh wasn't far from military bases. Could this have been a misidentified experimental aircraft? A 1992 declassified KGB document mentions unusual aerial phenomena in the Voronezh region in 1989, but it's vague on details. Some UFO researchers, like Philip Mantle in his book UFOs in the USSR, speculate the red sphere might have been a prototype drone or a laser test gone wrong, misinterpreted by kids as an alien craft. It's a stretch, but in the Cold War era, anything's possible. So, what do we make of the Voronezh UFO incident? On one hand, we've got consistent eyewitness accounts from the kids, backed by a few adults like Lieutenant Matveyev, and physical traces like the ground marks and cesium readings. On the other hand, the scientific evidence falls apart. Hematite rocks, Chernobyl fallout, and a burnt haystack don't exactly scream alien invasion. I lean skeptical. The kid's story sounds too much like sci-fi tropes from the time, and TASS's exaggeration reeks of propaganda. But I'll admit, the consistency of the kids' accounts, even years later, is hard to dismiss. Some of them, like Vasya Surin, were interviewed in 2009 by a Russian documentary crew and stuck to their story, saying they'd never forget those three-eyed giants. Now, let's entertain some theories. Maybe this was a prank that got out of hand, kids making up a story that the media ran with. Or perhaps it was a mass hallucination, fueled by the stress of a collapsing Soviet Union and the UFO craze of the 80s. There's also the military angle, a secret test mistaken for aliens. But if you're a believer, you might argue this was the real deal. A close encounter in a Soviet park, one of the few times aliens visited a major city and left witnesses behind. Me? I think it's a mix of imagination and desperation for something extraordinary in a bleak time. But I could be wrong. What do you think? That's all for today's deep dive into the Voronezh UFO incident. Was it aliens, a hoax, or something else? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Are you Team Alien or Team Skeptic? If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We've got more strange stories coming your way, so hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay in the loop. Thanks for watching Liminal Minds, and until next time, keep questioning the unknown. This video was researched using sources like the New York Times, Skeptical Inquirer, and UFOs in the USSR by Philip Mantle. Links in the description. See you in the next one.